So hello, first of all, hi. Hi, good to see you all. This community right here continually gives me joy. And so if I'm tired or like tonight I have a little bit of a cold, if I'm ever feeling like this place is a place that continually just puts a smile on my face and makes me feel comforted and makes me reminded that I'm not alone on this journey of life. So if you're a first-time guest and we haven't been able to meet yet, my name is Angie Von Slaughter, and I'm the lead pastor of One Church. And I want to extend a warm welcome, not just on behalf of myself, but on behalf of this community, that we're excited that you decided to join us tonight. And if you have any questions and you would like to chat, I always try to keep myself available for that. But as one quick side note, after the service, if you are new or this is your first time or you've been coming for maybe a couple months but you're still not totally sure who we are or just want to find out, afterwards we have a thing called Discover One Church. So after the service in the mission hall, there'll be some food, snacks, appetizers, drinks, that kind of thing. And I'll just give us kind of a recap of who One Church is, our history and why we are the way we are. And it's always a great time not only to hear that, but then a lot of people end up sharing their story about how they came here and what they're looking for. And that, hi, Luke. He's adorable. What can you do? I mean, they're kids, right? I have felt that way many times. Matter of fact, I did this week. I already told this story to the people that were listening. This week, I accidentally knocked over a giant, tall tower of cereal box display at the grocery store. Embarrassing. I wanted to do what Luke just did. I was like, hide. That was awful. I've always been afraid I was going to do that, and it happened. So, you know, the cool thing is once like your worst fear happens, like, what else can you be afraid of? Glass jars, someone said. That's what I was just going to say. Bring on the glass jars next. So here at One Church, if you're new, I'll go back on track. If you're new, we're a progressive non-denominational church that, as you can see from the slide on the screen, that we really seek to be a safe community that reflects the inclusive love of God. And so we try to ask ourselves in everything we do, are we displaying God's love in the best way we can? Are we displaying safety the best way we can? So we're continuing tonight our series, Unearthing Questions. And tonight's message is called Reclaiming Wonder. We're really going to kind of focus on this concept of wonder and childlike faith. But I want to do something a little bit different tonight, and we'll see how it goes, because I don't know how many kids there are here tonight. It's Family Saturday, so the kids are in service with us. If you are a kid and you would like, you can come up here to the front. Let's see, do you guys want to come up here? Yeah, I got a couple. Yes, okay, good. Yay. The kids can come. Parents, they won't be up here the whole service, just so you know, just for a little bit. Hi, how are you? Good. Good. Do you guys want to sit or hang out? No. I love kids. Their honesty is amazing. Okay, so I have some questions. You want to answer some questions? Okay, sure. Sure. Here, let's come closer this way. Oh, do you want to preach for me tonight?
No, I'm just looking.
You're just looking? Let me put this over here so they can hear you better. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay. I got some questions for you. First of all, what is your favorite thing to do?
Eat pizza.
Eat pizza and read.
I like to play with
Play with your toys. Henry, what's your favorite thing to do?
Eating pizza.
Eating pizza. Pizza's apparently a thing. Okay, we got some more people. You guys want to stand or sit? I think you're making everybody nervous by standing. Here, let's sit together. Live stream, will you be able to see me if I sit on the floor? You guys won't be able to, but just bear with me for a minute, okay? We're going to try to get everyone corralled. All right, you ready? Come sit with me. Come on. Okay, we good? Okay, so if you stay here and I get on my stool, stay there. Yeah? That was well done. Sorry, I'm looking down at you. Okay, so I asked you what your favorite thing was to do. Now, what makes you happy?
Reading.
Reading, playing games, and Playing with your dog.
Hanging out with my friends.
Hanging out with your friends.
Playing with my cats.
Playing with your cats?
Yeah, I have two of them. And their names are Fred and George, and they're so
Fred and George, is that what I'm hearing? Okay, so I'm going to just recap everything because I know you won't be able to hear it. She loves playing with her two cats named Fred and George.
And also, they're of course orange.
And of course, they're orange. Why, of course? Cats come in every color.
No, but haven't you read the Harry Potter book?
Haven't I read the Harry Potter books? Wow, she called me out. No, I mean, yes, I have. I've read them all. Okay, I'm going to ask a big question. What do you have to say, sweetie?
We have two rats, and usually sometimes we play with them, and we have a cat, and we play with them.
Okay, so two rats and a cat, and she plays with them. And that makes you happy? What are your rats' names?
The one, lucid hair was,
Okay. Did not quite get that. We'll find that later. Okay, got it. Now I'm going to ask you a bigger one, a bigger question. This one you got to really kind of think. What do you think God is?
a god,
A God? God is a God, but what's God?
spirit,
What? A spirit? Okay, there's no right or wrong answer. What do you think God is?
everything,
Everything?
and he's helpful,
God's helpful? Mm-hmm. Creator?
he's everywhere,
Everywhere.
nice,
He's nice. Anything else? Okay. Now, what have you always wondered about God?
where did he come from?
That is a great question. Where did he come from?
Did he, did he just make himself or something?
Did he just make himself or something? Yes, Travis. I'm saying the same thing. Did he just make himself or something? That's a really great question. Thank you. When's his birthday? Oh, December 25th. That's Jesus' birthday, not God's. So we're getting into some really good conversation. Okay, what do you have to say?
My cat's birthday is when my mom comes home.
Wait, let me see if I understand that correctly. Your cat's birthday is when your mom comes home? Wait, today? Your cat's birthday is today? That's amazing. What do you think God thinks about your cat's birthday? Happy? Do you think God made your cat? Yes? Maybe. You don't know. Why is it a maybe? Just 'cause. Okay. Anything else you've always wondered about God?
How did he make everything? Is he magic or something?
How did he make everything? Is he magic or something?
Or did he just find a magic block of clay?
Or did he just find a magic block of clay?
That would be really.
Maybe?
How did he make people?
How did he make people?
Is he an alien?
Is he an alien? We have lots of questions. Yes, sweetie.
My grandpa can do magic.
Her grandpa can do magic. She is a cool grandpa and a cool cat. Let me just tell you. 2 cats. Okay.
One cat. I have 2.
Now, before we get all off on cat and dog and squirrel land, I'm hearing you all have like big questions about God. Who likes to read? Who can read pretty good? You're an extremely fast reader. Are you comfortable reading in front of people?
Yeah.
Would you like to read something right now? Okay, first of all, here's the microphone. Why don't you go ahead and tell them your name?
I'm Scarlet.
Starlet?
Scarlet.
Oh, get it right, Angie. Scarlet. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you read that part?
Like, so,
I'll tell you when to stop.
the people brought children to Jesus, hoping he might touch them. The disciples shooed them off, but Jesus was irate and let them know it. Don't push these children away. Don't ever get between them and me. These children are at the very center of life in the kingdom. Mark this. Unless you accept God's kingdom in the simplicity of a child, you'll never get in. Then, gathering the children up in his arms, he laid his hands of blessing on them.
Good job, Scarlett. Okay, y'all, you are free to go. I was going to say roam about the building. Not true. You're free to go back to your parents. Chester can help you find your way if you're lost. Thank you. Can we give the kids a clap? This is one of the perks of combining kids ministry in with the adult service. You get some really fun conversations. So think back to the simplicity of being a child. Like, do you remember what that was like? Like, they're sitting here talking about cats and pizza and all the questions. And the sheer awe and wonder and simplicity of just simply being. I mean, they're amazed at the simplest things. Just being alive is amazing for a kid. Before life got hurried or stressful or busy, or our calendars started to get full, or our bank accounts started to get empty, before that kind of stuff started to creep in, before we had certainty, and maybe even later on, before we had skepticism. And if you weren't here last week, we talked about facing uncertainty. And we took a live survey to see just where you are with that and what your current questions are and doubts. And so in the first question I asked, in one word, describe the belief that started your faith deconstruction. And then I followed up with a second question, which was, what are you currently still questioning and doubting? For the second question, the top 3 things that you in this room, or if you were here last week, are wrestling with currently at this time are the Bible, the existence of God, and prayer. And prayer almost tied with the afterlife. So just to let you know, those were the top things. You're currently at this point wrestling with the Bible, the existence of God, and prayer or the afterlife. And the Bible was the number one thing, and closely to that was the existence of God. And your answers were overwhelmingly open and honest and vulnerable, which is why we did the survey that way, more of an anonymous one, because it allowed you to really just say, this is exactly the things that I've been wondering. And I hope this, if you were here, I hope this gave you a sense of comfort first in knowing that you're not alone in having these thoughts and these questions. And that for most of you, that you're also wondering very similar things. Sometimes we can feel when we go through uncertainty and we go through questioning, we can feel really alienated, we can feel alone, and we can feel sort of isolated, if you will, in that spiritual journey. Like we're the only one that thinks that way. And if you come from a background of certitude, which I know not all of you have, but I know a large portion of you have, come from some form of religious background that taught you a more certainty-based faith, then this is more often than not what we're told to believe, that only the heretics, apostates, and troublemakers ask questions. And so I guess I'll say if that's the case, then tonight, welcome. You're among friends, all of you heretics, apostates, and troublemakers. I had some people going, yay. See, questions, the reason why they make people uncomfortable is they're often a threat to certainty, and we humans love certainty. Studies have found that certainty evokes the same feelings, and there's little kids in the room, so I'll use this word wisely, physical intimacy, gambling, and some addictions. So certainty reduces anxiety and it gives us this sense of safety. So we're kind of hardwired for certainty. It makes sense that when we go through a faith crisis and all of a sudden we start deconstructing, we start to feel really anxious. We start to feel like someone just pulled the rug out from under our feet because we're not hardwired to feel that way. And feelings of uncertainty, they're registered as external threats to our limbic system in our brain. It sends signals to us that, wait a minute, this doesn't feel safe. Wait a minute, this might be an attack. And we prefer certainties rather than the unknown, regardless of how painful or uncomfortable those certainties may be. And I thought this was interesting. And one of the studies that I read is that we will often go so far as to ignore facts and reasoning, no matter how compelling they may be, if they seem to threaten our sense of certainty. We'll ignore facts and reasoning, logic, if it threatens our sense of certainty. Now, keeping this in mind, this might explain why it felt for so many of you, and maybe even currently feels for so many of you, terrifying to go through any kind of faith deconstruction. And I also want to kind of give us a little empathy, if we can, for those of us that think differently, that it might explain why some of those folks get really uncomfortable hearing some of our different perspectives and new ideas and more open theology, because it pushes against their biological being, which is saying, this makes me feel very uncomfortable. I like my box of certainty. And so it pushes up against them, and we will choose then to say, nope, I don't want to deal with that. I don't care how logical that is. I don't care how much it makes sense you are pushing against those boundaries. So pair that with our social and religious norms, and you have a recipe for wanting to keep your secrets of questioning and doubting to yourself. And it's not healthy. It's not a healthy environment. So last week I used this metaphor of a root-bound houseplant. That some houseplants, basically, if you don't put them in a different pot, the roots will grow around themselves and they'll basically choke themselves out. They'll cut off their roots from a vital supply of water and soil, basically stunting any further growth from that plant. And so this metaphor is that houseplants, like our spirituality, can become bound by the containers that they're in. And those questions and doubts, they've uprooted us, but maybe they're paving the way for a spiritual replanting, a bigger, more expansive container. And for some of us, that feels frightening and pushes up against that certainty. Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., he was a man that none of you probably even know. He served, at least I didn't, he served as Supreme Court Justice in the early 1900s. He said that certainty is often an illusion. And I found that interesting, that it's really this false sense that we have it figured out, but we don't always have it figured out. And then he said these words that were so insightful, that a mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its old dimensions. A mind that is stretched by its new experiences can never go back to its old dimensions. And we try to at first, and then we eventually realize we don't want to. It takes us a bit to get there. See, when we go through moments of deep spiritual questioning, it can be disorienting. But this disorientation can be the beginning of a holy and resurrecting quest, a spiritual awakening, a rebirth. So rather than shame and hiding our questions, what if we embraced them? I mean, what if we fully embraced the wonder of our questions? And I think this could be one of the many things that Jesus is implying when he said in the scripture that Scarlett read, unless you accept God's kingdom like a child, you'll never get in. In Christianity, we often interpret this scripture of childlike faith as saying you should just trust God. And I have heard that a lot, and I think there's a part of that is yes. But I think we're still missing so much more to this childlike faith than just trust God. think there could be more that Jesus is saying here about childlikeness. That when kids, they're prone to trusting people maybe they had just met, and maybe not strangers, but like you saw, me and those kids were like fast friends. And you see that. Kids are more prone to trust quickly. And kids are more prone to believe with abandon. Santa Claus, the bunny rabbit, whatever that thing is called. I already forgot. Easter bunny. I'm like, what's that thing called? That one. But the thing is, there's more to this characteristic of childhood than that. There's something we lose in childhood as we grow into adulthood. And I think those are a few things. And I've highlighted 3 different things that I can think of, and I know many more, but these are 3 things that I think really tie into this childlikeness. First, children ask questions. And I mean they ask questions relentlessly. Anybody have a kid out there? Even if they're adults. Do they ask lots of questions? Relentlessly. And the thing I love about kids is they don't censor or filter their questions either. I remember being, maybe in my early 20s, let's say, and my niece, who was really little at the time, she was really outspoken. I remember her being like, Angie, why is your butt so big? Thanks. Thanks a lot. And she would ask stuff like that all the time. Why does your hair look funny? Why is it? They don't censor it. It just comes out of their mouth. And they're not afraid. They're not scared. Because they really haven't, at that point, they haven't worried about their reputation of what people will think of them. And so I think besides their favorite word no, their other favorite word is why. Kids, I swear, want to know why for everything. A study conducted back in 2013 showed that mothers or stay-at-home parents were the most quizzed people on the planet. Poor parents. Their kids asked them more questions than they would their school teachers. And they especially found that 4-year-old girls were the most curious. Don't know why they made the top of the list, but 4-year-old girls were the most curious at asking, check this out, an astounding 390 questions a day. All of you with 4-year-old girls, I'm sorry. You're like, stop. I don't know why. I don't. So the questions they ask are relentless. So when we talk about faith like a child, I mean, it's constantly asking questions. As children age, the number of questions they ask decrease. Yet the questions they do ask increase in difficulty and depth. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold. If I start coughing, just talk amongst yourselves. So their question, I got really loud. The questions they ask, the difficulty is increased. So it becomes probably less about the, can I have a lolly, as she said, or the, can I have this? It becomes deeper and broader. And the parents have a hard time keeping up with the why. Children often ask why questions to help make sense of the world around them. As adults, we tend to ask why questions only when things are not in our control. That's interesting. So kids are trying to make sense of the world around them, and we're trying to control it. And that's because we often learn to be skeptical. And in some cases, we're afraid to ask the curious questions. Yet perfect love casts out all fear. We hear that. And this, I think, should apply to our fear of questioning God. And I'll let that sink in for a minute. Because that I know feels heretical and blasphemous. But if God is love, perfect love casts out all fear. That should apply, that perfect love should apply to this same thing, that you too should even be able to question God. And if you don't believe me, you see it all in biblical literature. Again and again and again and again, people questioning God. Kids aren't afraid to ask why or what if, and I don't think we should be either. So that's part of this illustration with childlike faith. So maybe part of a childlike faith is being able to ask the curious questions. 2, I think children have an innate sense of wonder. I mean, have you ever seen a kid when they have seen something for the very first time? Like blowing bubbles. You see like a baby and they see someone that's blowing bubbles and it's just like their mind is blown. They have this sparkle of wonder in their eye. It is something magnificent. They are just in awe and rapture over this. Or a kid that's seen snow for the very first time. Or maybe some of you Phoenicians that have seen snow for the very first time. Come on, it's hot here. And it becomes this moment of just sheer joy, sheer awe. And they're curious. Kids are innately curious and open. And as we grow older, I don't even think we mean to, but life's busyness and our schedules, and sometimes we get a little bit of a heartbreak or we have a hardship. And slowly but surely, sometimes we have a way of dulling this sense of wonder. Samuel Johnson, who was a writer and lexicographer, which is a tough word to say, in the 1700s, said this quote, "Curiosity is one of the permanent and certain characteristics of a vigilant or vigorous intellect." So, if you ask a lot of questions, you're smart. Pat yourself on the back. It's showing that your mind is working. It's showing that your mind is curious. It wants to know more. Now, something to note about Samuel Johnson is he was a writer and a lexicographer. That is hard to say. And one of his projects took 9 years to complete. He was constantly an idea guy, writing, and his 9-year project was compiling a dictionary. And it was one of the earliest dictionaries that we have. And this man was always thinking ahead. By definition, wonder is a feeling of surprise mixed with admiration. So think back to that blowing bubbles and snowflake, this sort of like, whoa, this excitement, this awe. Or wonder can be the desire to know something, to really know something. Surprise, admiration, and a desire to know. Now stop and think about this for a minute. Linguists will often say that in learning the English language that wonder and the word wander are often confused. Often. So when they're teaching this language, because of that one letter, A and O, they get mixed up. It gets confusing for people to learn the difference between wonder and wander. So for some of you, I want to offer some encouragement that what if this so-called wandering is actually wondering? What if this so-called wandering through the deep weeds and you're not even quite sure where you are? You're so far in this faith deconstruction, but it's actually wondering. It's a deep desire to know. A deep, deep desire to know. One of my favorite questions I've ever heard a kid ask, besides some that were up here, is where does the sky end? And I love that because I have the same question. Where does the sky end? What if we approach the world with that same kind of inquisitive wonder? What if we approach God with that same kind of inquisitive wonder? Like, where does God end? Where is the limit to the divine love? Is there a limit to God's love? Is there a limit to God? And I'm reminded of the words in Romans 8:38 through 9. And I'm convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love. neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow, not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. And when you embrace wonder, that's what that's like. You have this desire of nothing can separate me from this divine spirit. Father Richard Rohr says this about mystery, and I love this because it's something that we can start to understand, is that mystery is not something unknowable, but something infinitely knowable. Infinitely knowable. We're not talking about a mystery like, I can't figure them out. We're talking like I get to endlessly try to figure you out. And I'll never have it fully figured out, but that's the invitation. And maybe part of a childlike faith is being able to fully embrace wonder and mystery. And the last thing I want to give about children that I have noticed often is that children are authentic. Children are simply themselves. Just like they don't censor their questions, they don't censor themselves. They don't learn that until later. So they haven't learned how to have two identities yet. You know what I'm talking about? The one in private and the one public. The one that's, I'll say and think whatever, but the second I'm around people, I might have to filter certain things I say. Kids don't learn that until later. They're just themselves. They don't get caught up in social norms or the expectations of others. They simply be, and they're okay with just simply being. And I think a lot of them love just simply being. And they haven't developed that false self yet, the one that tells them they need to be or present a certain way to the world. They haven't learned that yet, of how they should be. So if they're mad, you'll know. If a kid is really mad, you know. They're throwing a fit. They're, throwing a fit and stomping on the ground. If they're afraid, they'll let you know. If they're sad, they will cry tears and they will let you know. If they're bored, trust me, they'll say it. And if they don't believe you, or maybe they're just curious and they want to know more, they'll let you know and they'll ask questions. So maybe part of having a childlike faith is also being able to fully be yourself. To simply be. And that's what I imagine when Jesus says that. And he's saying, no, bring these little children. And he's I get this sense that he's kind of almost upset with his disciples. Like, how dare you? He rebukes them. No, bring them. And he embraces them. And that's kind of what I imagine with us, is this sort of welcome to just be as we are. Nothing other than simply who we are. Author Robert McCammon writes, "We all start out knowing magic. We are born with whirlwinds, forest fires, and comets inside of us. We are born able to sing to birds and read the clouds and see our destiny in grains of sand. But then we get the magic educated right out of our souls. We get it churched out, spanked out, washed out, and combed out. We get put on the straight and narrow path and told to be responsible, told to act our age, told to grow up for God's sake. And you know why we're told that? Because the people doing the telling were afraid of our wildness and our youth, and we were a nuisance. And because the magic we knew made them ashamed and sad of what they've allowed to wither within themselves." It's a provocative statement. But he might be onto something a little bit here. Not to shame all the people that tell the kids to be quiet, because sometimes you just gotta. But he might be onto something here, that children are tapped into this kind of magic or wonder like nobody else. You want fresh perspective and youthfulness and joy and enthusiasm, have a whole bunch of kids around you. They will bring a new, fresh perspective in life. And they live with authenticity and enthusiasm. They're not afraid to to ask honest and curious questions. So, reclaiming our wonder and childlike enthusiasm just might be also what Christ is hinting at when he uses this phrase, born again, or being born of the Spirit. John 3, verses 7 through 8. Do not marvel that I said to you, you must be born again. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear its sound, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. The wind blows where it wishes, yet no one knows where it comes from, where it goes. It's this mystery. No one knows what it is. So it is to be born of that. To me, that sounds like embracing mystery. To me, that sounds like embracing this mystery of God, being born again, having faith like a child, recapturing that magical moment of original enthusiasm, wonder, and joy. At this time, I'd like to invite the music team to come up. But we're quick to avoid questions sometimes. And some of us don't like to sit in those questions long. We'll embrace them for a little bit, but sometimes we want to hurry those questions to find hurried answers. We want to hurry up and find out the what and the why. But I really want to kind of challenge us in this place to not lose that sight of that magic of the why or the what if.